What if a movie wasn't a cash grab nostalgic sequel? Or another installment in a dying franchise existing only to sell merchandise and theme park tickets? Imagine a movie that isn't a soft reboot of a previously successful original. This is The Substance. And it is one of the most interesting and thrilling movies of the year. Now, how do I turn this off? All right, so 2024 has been dominated by sequels, prequels, and soft reboots. And while some of these movies are legitimate films with artistic merit, most of them are not, ranging from the acceptably mediocre to the downright bad. The Substance, though, breaks the mold with a familiar archetype that's delivered in a unique way. Essentially, The Substance is a shadow self story like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or the Nutty Professor. It's an extreme, self-aware body horror parody, and the mixture of comedy and horror is always a difficult line for a movie to straddle, but The Substance does it successfully, mostly by combining skin-crawling practical effects with a sick sense of humor to create some of its most memorable moments. The plot of The Substance revolves around Elisabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore, a 50-year-old aging starlet whose fame is all but faded. Things only get worse for Elisabeth when she's fired from her long-running aerobics TV program she's hosted for years, ironically enough, due to her advanced age.
It's not your fault.
Then, while driving home in a distracted state, Elisabeth gets into an accident and is taken to the hospital, where she encounters a mysterious nurse who suggests that she'd be a perfect candidate while slipping a USB drive into her pocket that's labeled only The Substance, a chemical compound that promises to produce a better version of yourself in every way. But you must follow the rules. So a desperate Elisabeth places her order, and upon taking The Substance, transforms into Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, a younger, more beautiful, and more perfect version of herself. But she must switch back every 7 days, spending 7 days as Sue and 7 days as Elisabeth. However, with Sue quickly becoming a rising star in a town where sex appeal is the most valuable commodity, following those rules becomes increasingly challenging, and despite them being one person, Elisabeth and Sue's symbiotic relationship begins to transform into a parasitic relationship. It's a simple plot, with a lot to say about aging, beauty standards, the horror of losing your sex appeal, the stupidity of Hollywood, and the desperate individuals who seek success there only to eventually find themselves cast aside for a newer and sleeker version of themselves. It's a tale as old as storytelling, but The Substance does what a good horror parody movie should do by taking the genre's most familiar concepts, tropes, and motifs and ramping them all up to 11. So while the absurdity that The Substance ventures into in doing so may end up being too much for some viewers, it's those absurd aspects of this movie that drove The Substance into my mind like a splinter. And its influences are obvious, but frankly I don't even want to mention them here because of what that spoils about the plot. True to the body horror genre, The Substance delivers on the gore, but its most terrifying aspects are subtle. Like the actual substance's lack of detailed instructions, you feel just as unsure and uncomfortable with the application of the substance as the protagonist does. The instructions are only a few note cards with a single word written on each of them, along with some bags, tubes, and needles that also have single word labels. What? But the way The Substance conveys that experience of uneasiness is a big part of the reason that it stands out against most of 2024's movie lineup. The cinematography is really interesting, but the sets used throughout the film create this eerily sublime framing to the surreal storytelling that really take it up a notch. The Substance balances Eliza Sue being in this huge landscape of Hollywood with an aspect of claustrophobia throughout the film. From the narrow hallway shots to the litany of close-ups on actors' faces to Elisabeth's lonely apartment. The Substance does dichotomy well, from sublime claustrophobia to the incestuous relationship between beauty and ugliness that's woven into the story. Now, there was a brief stretch of time right before the third act of this over 2 hour long experience where The Substance started to lose me a little, but just wait till you get to that third act. It'll pull you right back in and justify the momentary lull. But should you watch The Substance? Well, that depends. Did you like Twisters, or Alien Romulus, or Venom 3? Do bold artistic decisions scare you? Do you often hunger for the same meal again and again and again? then you might not be a great candidate for The Substance. But if you think you could enjoy a movie that takes an age-old story concept and puts a refreshingly unique spin on it, then The Substance may be for you. But if you don't like it, well, all you have to do is stop.